Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Talking Away the Taboo. I I have a really special episode for you guys. You are about to meet Amanda. Oh my gosh, Amanda, I just realized your
Yeah.
last name is Bryk, right?
Yeah.
Like I for some reason I think I okay, by the way, for everyone. So Amanda's last name, you're gonna meet her in 5 seconds, but Amanda's last name is Bryk. And I think my brain does this like weird dyslexic thing. So half the time when I'm thinking about your name, I think that your name is Burke, but I know that it's Brick. So I was like, all of a sudden I was stumbling over my words. I'm like, wait, how do I pronounce your last name? Okay, let's start
You're
again.
not the only one. That's very common.
All right, so now we're starting again. Amanda, I'm so excited to have you here. I Amanda, for those of you who don't know, Amanda is, and I was supposed to have a baby board member who came on in May, May of 20
Uh,
of this year. Is that right?
what
I
is,
think
oh,
so.
yeah, it's the same year still. I'm like already in 2026.
Yes.
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 Okay, right. And
Or maybe
she
a little, no, was my third board meet. So maybe a little bit earlier.
maybe a little bit
Oh,
earlier, but
yeah.
but she is a new-ish board member.
Yeah.
But I would say, I mean, newish, but I you would never know that in terms of her activity. I'm stumbling over my words. I need to figure this out. Okay, let's try this again. Um, Amanda joined us in the spring, but it feels like she's been here for much longer than that because she's really made her presence known and she's wanted to get involved in so many different initiatives that we're doing. And so I'm just grateful that you're here and you're with us. And I mean, you reached out and the reason why you're on this board is because you have a story. And so we're here today to talk about your story. So say hello to everybody and introduce yourself. Give people a little bit of a background of who you are, where you grew up, your life, your husband. Like just give people a little bit of a window into who you are.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me, Amy. I'm honored to be here, honored to be on the board. I'm from originally the Upper West Side of New York, born and raised, and I'm an only child. And I left New York for college and then moved back and met my husband, who actually I knew for a long time. We went to camp together, and we got married and we lived in New York for a while. I went to law school. He was in medical school, and he ended up matching for his residency to in Cleveland at the Cleveland Clinic. So we moved there for 6 years, and I was a lawyer there at a big law firm there, and we lived there. Then he did his fellowship in Virginia, so we were there for a year, and now we live in Hollywood, Florida, and this is our hopefully permanent forever home.
Oh my
We have
goodness.
yeah.
I'm like just
uh,
listening. I'm just listening to like all the different places. I'm going, oh my God, that sounds exhausting.
yes. So now we're finally um here for good, and we have three wonderful, amazing children. And my husband is a urologist, and he decided to specialize in male infertility and male sexual health. So that's what he went for his fellowship in. And he's still, he does general urology, but he specializes, and really that's like his bread and butter is doing the male infertility side of things. So yeah, that's us. And now I spend my time being with the kids. I volunteer at pretty much anything that the school ever needs, and that's how I keep myself busy. And with I was supposed to have a baby, so thank you so much for having me.
I, I, I'm very. We're all honored, all of us. And I was supposed to have a baby. We're honored to have you. And like when you joined the board, I knew that your husband was a urologist, but I didn't realize all of the different ways. I didn't realize his specialty until much later in. And spoiler alert, her husband, Darren, yeah, he's also going to be speaking for us at some point in the future. But well, today is about Amanda. So let's just dive in here.
Yeah.
Can look, we know the end of the story. You're living in Hollywood and you have three beautiful children, thank God. But take us back to, look, the two of you have known each other for a long time. So I'm sure you must have had conversations, probably even early on, of, when knowing his career trajectory and that you were going to be moving around a lot and that it was going to be intensive for him and for you. You're a lawyer. It's not like you also had a tremendous amount of education and training and work and talking about work-life balance. Like, what was the conversation like in terms of when the two of you got together and thought, like, when do we want to have kids? How many kids do we want to have? Like, what did that look like?
Yeah. Um, it's funny because, like I said, I'm an only child. Darren is one of four. So the conversation was pretty much like I said, I could have one, maybe two. And he was like, I want four or five. That was the conversation. And it kind of just felt silly because we didn't have any at the time. And like you said, I was in law school, he was in medical school. So we kind of knew we weren't going to start trying to have kids right away when we got married. We were still young. But the second we moved to Cleveland for his residency, so we had already been married 4 years, and we were definitely already hearing from people like, when are you going to have kids? When are you going to have kids? Like, you're not getting any younger. Um, that we
And how old were you? Just to
We
how
got
old
married
were
when we were 24,
okay,
so we were 28.
okay.
It's so funny, like, thinking about it now, we were really babies, like, we were super young, so to even think that we were having those conversations, so we were 28, and we moved to Cleveland, and right at that point, we were like, "Okay, we should, start thinking about trying to get pregnant." But we were both I was starting like a job, my first real job out of law school, and Darren was starting his residency. And we kind of just ignored the fact that that was probably not the best time. But we said, okay. And, thank God we got pregnant on our first time trying. And other than me being like extremely sick for that first pregnancy with our daughter, I had a pretty uneventful pregnancy, other than, Darren really was not around. I was working this crazy job with crazy hours. And when Sadie, our daughter, was born, Darren was just starting his second year, where like he started doing nights, and he was really never around. So it was just like a hard transition. I had a pretty bad case of postpartum depression. I think it was a mix of, I mean, what caused it, I don't know, but it was just he wasn't around. We were living in Cleveland. Like, we didn't have our parents with us. We didn't have our siblings. Um, we didn't have the support that, I think is so important when you have kids. Um, so it was a really tough couple months after Sadie was born. But, we got through it. And I would say when Sadie was about a year, we were like, okay, maybe we're ready to start trying again. And again, it seemed pretty seamless. We were like, okay, let's try. I peed on a stick. I got the positive, and I was really naive. And I was like, okay, I got a positive pregnancy test. I'm calculating, I'm having a baby in 10 months from now, like figuring it all out, like started telling people, we told our parents, and I was probably like maybe 3 weeks pregnant. Like, I was really like, I peed on the first second you could. And I remember like calling the doctor and them saying like, you got to wait to come in. And I was like, no, so finally I get to my appointment. And at this point, I've probably told pretty much everyone, and I'm like 8 weeks pregnant. And I remember Darren couldn't come to the appointment, which was normal. He really wasn't. When you're in residency, you're not like, you can't be like, oh, sorry, I gotta go to take my wife to her doctor's appointment.
Totally.
So he couldn't come. And I remember just like getting on the table again, like didn't think anything. And they're like doing, they do the internal on the first, for the first ultrasound. And they're like, it's just taking a long time. I'm looking at the screen. And again, I didn't know anything. I was so unfamiliar with the whole, like, since my pregnancy with Sadie was so like normal, I never dealt with anything other than that. So even when they were doing that and they weren't saying anything, it was just taking a long time, I still didn't think anything. I was like, "Okay, I guess, like, something's weird, like, maybe they couldn't find it or whatever." And then I remember they said, "You have to go to, like, across the hall, there's a better ultrasound machine, and you're gonna go get an ultrasound over there." And still, it's like I'm laughing now looking back at it because I'm so well versed now that I can't believe I didn't realize what was happening, but I was so naive. I really just had no knowledge of anything. So I was like, okay. And I'm just like walking along, going next door. And again, so they start to do the ultrasound and then they said to me, like, "We're really sorry, but there's no heartbeat." And I was like, I, I remember being like, "What?" Like, I don't even know what that means. I said, like, "Are you sure? Like, maybe the dates are off or whatever." And they were like, "No, we see like all the other things that are, show that you're pregnant and that far along, but there's no heartbeat. Like, we're really sorry." And then I remember they said, like, "Oh, you could go where we'll walk you out to the doctor's office this, like, back way so you don't have to go through the waiting room." And I remember then calling I remember I was, like, texting Darren probably, and back then I really, like I didn't talk to Darren during the day when he was a resident because he was scrubbed into surgeries, he was this, like, there was no time, and I remember calling him just, like, a bunch of times in a row so that he would finally pick up, and just saying to him, like, they said, like, "The baby, there's no baby, like, there's no heartbeat, there's nothing." They started talking to me. Then when I got back with the doctor, they were like, at that point, I think I wasn't hearing anything. I was, like, in this blur. They're starting to tell me I have to be scheduled for a DNC. They need to go in. I was like I remember just being like, "What?" Like, I'm still processing what was happening, and I remember not being able to, like, fully understand it until Darren ended up, like, telling his, whoever his senior residents and whoever he was with, like, "I need to go be with Amanda." Um, and he left and him, like, explain and I was like, I'm confused. I don't understand, you know, and that was our first loss, my first DNC. Um, my first time having to, like, break the news to a lot of people that I, was expecting that I was gonna be pregnant, and then I was like, "No." Actually, I even remember now that we're talking about this, again, I'm, like, shaking my head and laughing because I just can't it's, like, so something I wouldn't do now, but I didn't as Darren always says, what's the saying? Like, you made the choices and the decisions you were capable of making at that time. I took pictures of, like, us wearing pajamas with Sadie in the pajamas with, like, a onesie, and, like, had these at 8 weeks. Like, I was so I just yeah, I had no idea that this was even a possibility. So,
And why would you? Why would you, right? Like this is I mean, this is what everybody dreams of, and there was no reason to expect. Like, I always think about, and I'm sure you like now. Look, the spoiler alert is that Amanda has had multiple miscarriages, and we're going to get to this in a second. But I always think about like the statistic, right? That miscarriage happens in 1 in 4 pregnancies, which is a huge number, right? It's 25% of all pregnancies end in a loss. But if you flip that around, that means that 75% of the time, everything is fine. And so for the majority of the world, like people just, they get pregnant and they have babies and they like don't think that it could possibly go any differently. So why would you have? I mean, oh, I'm hearing you speak about this and like my heart is going out to you, in that era of your life of just like that naive person. Like we were all there. Yeah.
yeah. And that really opened this window into a whole world that I had never known, and I didn't know it then, and now looking back that, like, no pregnancy after that was ever going to be like my first pregnancy with Sadie. It was just it really opened up this new this new world of anxiety, of all the things that you can possibly think of happening. I would never be that naive woman again that I was during that first pregnancy. So after that, and after I got the DNC, when they told us we could try again, we tried again. And that also, I got pregnant again, but that also resulted in a miscarriage. And after that, then I was starting to really like monitor things, getting blood work early, all of those things that, after they say multiple miscarriages that they would do. They were starting to do for me, like checking my HCG, letting me come in early. So after that, I got pregnant again, and that was my first son, Liam, my middle child, um, and it was just a completely different pregnancy because every second after you have your first miscarriage, you're like waiting for the other shoe to drop. Every little thing, I was like, is this a sign? Am I feeling him move? Is he this? I would bleed. I bled like for the first couple months with Liam. And every time I would go to the bathroom, I was like, please don't let there be blood. Please don't let there be blood. I would call the doctor every single time. And it was just, that was the start of there being this really terrible anxiety throughout the pregnancy, until he was out, pretty much. Obviously, once you have kids, it's a different set of anxiety until I think forever, because you're always worried about your children. But this was like, is there going to be a baby at the end of this? Is something else going to happen? Um, and so that was our, then Liam, I mean, thank God. And we named him Liam because, like, to us, he was our world, like Lee, our nation. And I spoke about that at his bris, that, he was this miracle for us that we like really we weren't sure was going to happen. And he was that for us. So after
Amanda,
that, yeah,
Amanda, can you go back and like I'm like listening to this and you're like I'm hearing the anxiety and like I'm remembering it also so well myself. I'm also wondering just about like the people around you, like
yeah,
during that pregnancy and also during like the losses and your husband who was around and not around and in residency. I mean, as many of our audience, many people in our audience know, I'm also a physician, and I remember the craziness of residency and working 90 hours a week and not being able to call and not being able to come to appointments. Like, how was that for him? How was that for all the people around you? Like, how? Like, how? Can you talk a little bit about that piece?
yeah, no, definitely. Um, yeah, it was definitely very difficult. And I think, for Darren, similar experience as to me, he started having more anxiety with each pregnancy. But I think it's different. He didn't, I definitely are, we don't do well when both of us are anxious. It's like one of us needs to be the strength. So it was definitely him. It was definitely him who would reassure me that, oh, it's going to be okay, or this isn't something, or would encourage me to call the doctor if I was actually worried or to go in. Um, we had a lot more support, I would say, from our families and our friends after they knew about these losses. To then like really be there for us. And I definitely also remember that with Liam, with the pregnancy, I waited a lot longer to tell people.
I was just going to ask you about
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
And I go back and forth because I don't think there's a right answer. Like, I really don't. I think you could tell people immediately or you could wait. I don't think I it's not that I don't believe in Ayanhara. Like, I'm not sure. I don't think that that's what's going to make or break a pregnancy. Um,
Tell for people who don't know what Ayanhara is,
Oh, yeah.
explain to them.
Like a bad omen or like a bad luck that you're gonna tell people and then something bad might happen. So, the custom is to wait until 12 weeks. I don't believe that you have to do that. I think the only thing that you need to know is if you tell people early, knowing that, maybe something might happen, God forbid, that you're okay then breaking that news to them and being okay to share with them that, this pregnancy didn't work out or we had a loss or something like that. So I think for me, that's what I just had to learn that, we waited a little bit longer, but and we told, we were more apprehensive and we waited until we felt more comfortable. But I do think after going through those first two losses, I felt more comfortable being vocal about it, which I remember is interesting because I really, at that point, didn't know many people who had had miscarriages. Whether that means I didn't know them or they just weren't talking about it at the time. Um, I don't think at that point I had said I had a miscarriage to someone and someone's response was, "Oh, that happened to me too." At least until that point. It definitely changed after. But at that point, um, I didn't it's not that I didn't feel support because I totally did, but I didn't have like a community of people necessarily who had been through what I had been through, that I could go and rely on. So
And
that
what
was hard.
and how was it also? I mean, you had your daughter, you had Sadie, so I like you she was oftentimes I hear from people that when they have losses, if they don't have any children yet, like it's kind of easy, so to speak, to retreat from community or like not get together with family and friends because people often just need alone time to kind of process the grief. And when they do have children, then that part is not really possible because their kids, like you can't just like keep kids at home. Like they need to go out. Either they go to the play group or they have play dates or they need to go to the park. Like you can't just kind of like lock yourself away. Like you still have to engage. And so I'm wondering how all of that was for you. Like what did you need or what were you doing during that time?
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. I didn't have the ability to kind of retreat and go on my own. And I also, aside from just having Sadie, I had this like really intense job that um I wasn't like getting miscarriage leave. There was no such thing. And so that also added an element to it. I like kind of had to tell my bosses something really personal that I really wasn't like so comfortable sharing. And that made me sad, kind of, that I had to like share something so personal about my life at work. I feel like there's not many things where you have to do that, where you're kind of like forced to share something so personal. But like I couldn't really I wasn't gonna say, "Oh, I have a surgery that I need to take off some time for." And and they took it well and they were supportive and things like that, but it still made me feel like a boundary was being crossed. I was being forced to like
Yeah.
cross this boundary that I didn't want to. I didn't want to share this with my coworkers and my boss, but I had to because I didn't really have a choice. Like I needed to schedule a DNC. I needed to have some recovery time. I needed someone to take over my workload and talk to clients and figure out a way. So that was also really hard. And with Sadie, yes, we were definitely still had to go out there. We had to go to the park. I had to see other people be pregnant and see people having their second, their third kids, and me feeling like, am I ever going to have that? And then also, you deal with the people saying, well, you have one amazing child, like you should be so thankful. And like not for one, like I never was like not thankful for my Sadie. Of course, I was extra thankful for her. Um, but I was saying, and as you say, and I was really sad because I wanted another baby. And if I was dreaming and wanting another baby, I should be able to do that, even if I have one already. So there was a lot of mixed emotions and, conflicting feelings of like, I should be appreciative of Sadie and focus all my attention on her, but also feeling like maybe like I should, if I want to have this another baby, I should be allowed to try for that and want for that and be able to grieve whatever losses we had in trying to bring another child into this world. And yeah, and I think that was even I felt that a lot more after Liam was born.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah, it's an interesting it's this interesting interplay, right? Where you like people often think that emotions are kind of like, very monolithic or like one-sided, like either you're happy or you're sad. And like that just doesn't exist in this world, right? Like you can be happy for so many reasons, but also be sad for so many reasons. And the problem is that if you lean into the happy and don't like spend time with the sad at all, then it tends to fester and makes people bitter and like not able to function in the same way. But if you also lean into the sad too much, then you're also just it's not healthy. So there's like a very interesting interplay with both, and you have to do both. Like everyone has to do both.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
So can you like what were the things like you know what actually before I even ask you that, can you like tell us what happened next? So
Yeah.
you had Liam who was this incredible miracle after these two losses that like finally after an anxiety-ridden pregnancy and all of that like you have this baby in your arms and thank God. And
Yeah.
and then what?
And then we were faced with this like weird period of time. Well, then it was COVID and the
Right.
world fell apart. And, and then we were at the end, we were starting to be towards the end of Darren's residency. And we kind of had this new challenge or, where we kind of like had to think about the timing of everything a lot more than I really wanted to, or that like I really try not to like plan pregnancies and things like that because as we see, it's just not possible. Um, but we were faced with this that, we were in Cleveland still where we had built a community, we had our kids, but we were going to be moving somewhere completely new. We knew we were moving to Virginia just for 1 year. And I really didn't love the idea of me being alone in a new place with a newborn. I just thought I would feel really isolated. And I think I was very scared of like my postpartum emotions of
Yeah.
what would happen being so isolated. Um, we literally moved there with no one. We didn't know a soul. So we were kind of faced with this idea of like, okay, if we think of the timing exactly and this and that, if we want to have the baby while we're still in Cleveland where we have the support, and we kind of put ourselves like on a timeline. And I couldn't get pregnant. So we did it with enough time that like I think we gave ourselves like 2 years that we knew and um we were trying. I couldn't get pregnant. I, met with my OB. He said, okay, let's put you on some medication to, so that hopefully the chances are better. And sure enough, I got pregnant after 6 months of trying. And that was also like a new challenge for us because for every other time it had been so seamless. And so that was like a new thing added to the mix. I got pregnant and the same thing happened and I had another loss. And I remember actually again Darren couldn't be there. Um but this time I was prepared. Like, Once I saw that they were taking a long time, I was like, okay, is there no heartbeat? And they said, no, we're really sorry. And I remember like crying and that I had switched OBs and he felt he felt terrible. And I remember he said, he's like, you will have another baby, like if you want to, or something like that. And I remember I was just sitting in the chair, hysterical, and called Darren again. And that point, we had a really tough decision to make because the clock was running out, and I kind of said like, I'm really sorry, but I don't think I want to try again. Maybe like down the road, but like it would be cutting it too close. The baby would, if it were to work out and everything, and the timing wouldn't, I just don't feel comfortable. And that loss really took a toll on Darren. I'm sure, I know they all did, but this one, I just remember him being really distraught. And we talk about it now, and we talked about it then, and he kept saying, I just feel like it's my fault, like that we're on this timeline because of my career trajectory, and like it's my fault that like we can't try again because I'm moving us to this like random place, and it's my job, and it's this and it's that, and that was really hard to see that like he was blaming himself. As much as I would reassure him, like, it's not you, it's just the timing didn't work out. And I at that point, he was very sure he wanted to have another baby. He was very much like, I want to have a third child. And at that point, I was a little bit like, maybe I'm content with just two. Like, maybe I could be okay. And maybe I don't need to go through this again. Like, it's taking such a toll. So we kind of had to like table the conversation for a while because just the
Yeah.
timing and the place, there was nothing we could do.
Yeah. I mean, I really I want to just spend a moment and just sit with that concept for a second, because I think, you know, people often have this idea in their heads that which is entirely correct, that there's the big infertility world of word, sorry. It's the egg and it's the sperm or it's the uterus, and that infertility happens when one of those things are not working out well. And for a vast majority of infertility, that is the case. There's some biological, mechanical issue that is causing a problem where embryos can't be created, or the embryos are not being implanted or growing or whatever it is. And that is 1,000% correct. And I love when you said also and, because I'm a big, our director of operations, Becca Flyer, has schooled me instead of using the word but, I should be using the word and. So now I use the word and all the time. Um, and there is another concept called circumstantial infertility, or some people call it situational infertility, where basically it's kind of like the rest of the world out there is the reason why this is not happening. That the egg and the sperm are working okay. And for you, look, it sounds like there were a multitude of issues, but the issue of you getting pregnant per se wasn't exactly the issue, thank goodness. It was staying pregnant.
Yeah.
Um, and but the timing of saying like, we're not going to do this now because of my job, or when other people say things to me like, I can't get pregnant now because my mental health is not like in a place where it should be, or physically I have this chronic illness where I can't get pregnant now, or we don't have the finances to be able to do that, or my husband works a job in another country, half the month, and so our timing hasn't hooked up where like we're able to get on the right page in terms of when I'm ovulating. Like, there are a million reasons why people aren't having babies that don't have anything to do with the egg or the sperm or the uterus. And so I think it's and it's they're all incredibly painful. And so the fact that you're bringing this up now, I think is really super important for everyone else to understand and to just hear about it from a validating perspective.
No, definitely. Yeah. It was very tough. And like I said, for Darren especially, because I think there was the idea of it being his fault, but also this idea that he knew he wanted another child. Um, and maybe I was okay with that being the end of our fertility journey. That was difficult.
Were
Um,
were there things that people were saying to you? I mean, in that moment in time where, like, I mean, were like, "Oh, why aren't you having another?"
yeah.
Or,
So after this loss was the time that I posted on social media. I don't know what it was, but after this DNC, I took a picture and you see I'm in the like waiting room. I have a mask on and I'm in because it was still semi-COVID times and I'm wearing a gown and it's before I went in for my DNC. And I wrote a caption of, this was my fifth pregnancy, but only two living children. And I wanted to point out that, social media can sometimes show that, I have these, I have this life that it looks like, but really this is the other side of it. And mm, I've never, like, I don't know, I could look at the post now, but I had like 300 or something comments. Of
wow.
people and mostly people a lot or not mostly, but a lot of people being like, "I went through this, I'm so sorry," or "I just had my second DNC," or "I just" and all just flooding with the comments. And I was like, "Wow, this is the first time or of these 3 miscarriages where I really felt supported and it was a different type of support to feel like you had a community that there were other people like you. There were other people who had gone through this and are okay and have, survived this and have gone on to have more kids or have gone on to live beautiful lives where they've decided not to pursue more kids or um and and that's when I found, like, places like I was supposed to have a baby because that was what I started doing, like, going on social media and going, I don't know, on my explore page, and that was, like, all that would come up because I would be searching and searching and searching, and then I would find these accounts, and I'd be like, "Wow, like, there is a whole world out there that I was so unaware of." I did not know it existed, and I was so thankful that I found it because that was truly the best support I could have. It's not that people saying, I'm so sorry, is there anything I could do?" It's not that that's not supportive, like, it's so supportive, it's so appreciated. It's just different. It's like if you haven't gone through it, it's just hard to imagine. It's just hard to put yourself in that situation, and still to this day, when I see people announcing their pregnancies so early or, like, I know they've never had a struggle with it, there's, like, something in the back of my head that's just like, "Ugh, I hope nothing happens because, like, I don't want them to, like, experience this world," and, like, they're being naive, but also, like, they're allowed to be naive, and it's just this you can't explain it, but it's hard, and it's just different when you can connect with someone who has gone through the same thing or similar. Um, it's a different support, and I needed that, especially at that time. I really needed that type of support, and that 3rd miscarriage that then we decided we were gonna, like, take a break from trying was also really hard because I think once you have a loss, people assume that, like, a certain amount of time will go by and then they'll hear that you're pregnant because they're, like, assuming, like, "Oh, you had a loss, like, you're gonna want to replace that with a living child. And we were taking a break. And so we weren't going to have a pregnancy announcement that we were going to say to people. And I think that was hard because there were a lot of people who I think were like, oh, well, aren't you going to try again? And aren't you like waiting around and kind of being like, oh, are you having more trouble? Like a couple months down the line when like I wasn't getting pregnant. And I was like, no, we actually just decided that we're going to take a little break for now and we're not going to try anymore. So that was also a different avenue that I hadn't experienced before.
I mean, how did you feel when people were asking that? Because for a lot of people, those are very invasive questions. And like to have to then, like you were talking about having to, talk about pieces of your personal life at work, but like
Yeah,
having people specifically asking about your family planning, like that's that not everyone can kind of just
I
roll with
know.
it.
Yeah, I think I just try to remember that the people who are asking those types of questions, they're not trying to like be invasive or be, you know, mean or bringing up bad feelings. I just think they are really naive. It's usually the people who have not had those experiences and they're genuinely like, they're curious and they want to know and they want to find out about if you're pregnant or not, or if you're going to have another kid. I genuinely think it comes from a good place. It's just hard to remind yourself of that in the moment because it can feel like a dagger to the heart to like have to answer that. But I just try to remind myself, like, it's not coming from a bad place. They probably have never had to experience loss, so they don't know any better than to ask those questions. And, that was me 5 years before. Like, I probably would have asked someone that. Like, I have learned so much through my journey. And I think it's such important work. Um, and it needs to be more like mandatory for every single person, not just people who have gone through it, who want to do the work and want to learn, but for even people who haven't gone through it, of how to approach people who have had these experiences, what's important to say and not to say, and to ask and not to ask. Because those are the people who end up asking these questions that, you know, end up coming off like, "Leave me alone."
Right. Right.
So, it's hard.
And I
Eh
imagine also, I mean, being that Darren was not around as much, like
Yeah.
you were probably taking the brunt of most of it. Like people were
Okay.
asking you, like you were the one who was out in public. And I'm sure, your families and friends, like people were asking you because they couldn't reach him.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And yeah, so that was definitely my, I don't know what the word is, but, like, the beginning of my, journey with, like, infertility on social media and things like that, and I'm hate to be like, I'm thankful for it, but, like, I'm thankful for that it got me there because it's this wonderful community that it's, like, to tap into. I mean, it really got me through that pregnancy loss, and, after that, we we moved to Virginia, and about 6 months into us living there, we said, "Okay, like, maybe," I was like, "Yeah, I do feel like we should add one more to the family if we can," and we were like, "Okay, we're gonna try." At that point, we knew we were moving to Florida after. We knew that I felt we'd have a more of a community in Florida. I was okay having a newborn when we moved. Um, I got pregnant, and then this like other world opened up where I went to the doctor and they kept telling me that like they weren't sure if it was a viable pregnancy or not. Um, it was like I would go and they were like, well, we see all these things, but everything is measuring small and the things that we see should be developed are not there. But there was a heartbeat, but like they just kept being like, we don't know. You just have to wait and see. And that I had never experienced before, like a wait and see. I did not do well with that because it's for someone who already has this anxiety of the other shoe dropping. And now someone's telling you like, oh, there's this hope because there's a heartbeat and the things are developing, but like it's not going as normally as it should. Um, it was it brought up a lot of other conversations that Darren and I had to have that we actually, for a couple who had been married at that time 10 10 years, hadn't had about, pregnancy and, like, if there is something wrong with the baby, what we're comfortable with. Are we terminating a pregnancy? Are we living like that? Are we bringing a child with medical needs into our family? What did that and that was a lot of really, really rough conversations and time for me and Darren. I it's like thinking back on it, I can't believe we had never talked about it, but again, it was like it never was something that we had to deal with. So, yeah, so that was like, it was just a lot of appointments, like, and it kept being like, okay, come back in another 2 weeks, come back in another 2 weeks, come back in another 2 weeks. Eventually, like, we went to an REI and, they did some testing. And I think I was about 15 or 16 weeks when they told us that everything was looking okay. And, that not that I didn't have anything to worry about, but that like you could proceed, on thinking that this will be a normal pregnancy. A couple things like one was that I was also bleeding a tremendous amount.
Oh
That
my God.
entire that so actually in the beginning and then the entire pregnancy I was bleeding. That was really, really scary. And as someone who has the trauma of past miscarriage and you're bleeding all the time and whatever, it was just really it wasn't a great time. It was really traumatic. Um, it was really difficult. I spent a lot of time going to the hospital. We went to the ER numerous times. Um, I mean, thank God everything was okay, but it's like you're just each time I'm thinking, I'm like, okay, this is the end. This is the end. Um, it's
I, I'm
just
I'm like I'm like listening to you talk about this and thinking like already as a person who's already traumatized from previous pregnancy losses and now like having to go through that like incredibly heightened state multiple times as you're bleeding because for most of the world and most of the bleeding in pregnancy is not normal,
mm,
period. So
right.
it just, oh my goodness, I'm like, I'm listening to this and my heart just goes out to you.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, it was a lot. It was definitely my most I think it was the hardest pregnancy on both me and on Darren and our relationship together. We also like we were moving when I was like 34 weeks pregnant and we had two like young kids and it was really, really hard. It was a very, very difficult pregnancy, and I mean, thank God a million times, we had our youngest son, Owen, and he's perfect and amazing, and crazy, but, like, he's here, and that was truly, it was I don't know another word other than difficult, but just it took a real toll on both of us and our marriage. Just the conversations that we had to have, and I think when you're a woman, like once you have the baby, something happens. You don't forget the pregnancy per se, but a lot of like the memories are blurred and they're kind of I don't know, you don't remember, like, all the terrible feelings or the extreme nausea and the terrible anxiety. It's like you have this baby and you're like, "Oh, this is what you remember, this, like, physical child," and, like, bringing this baby into this world, like, "Oh, I wanna do this again." Like, I'm not thinking about all the things that happened beforehand. And when you're the other partner who's not carrying the child, I think sometimes it can be, and this was the case with me and Darren, he remembers a lot of those things really well. And he, when we have the conversations about if we want another baby, he's like, "Do you not remember how horrible the last pregnancy was? Like, do you not remember like the severe anxiety?" I mean, I bought a Doppler. I was like checking the heartbeat all the time. We actually, like, now a lot of memories are coming back to me. Like, Darren ended up making a rule that like I couldn't do the Doppler unless he was home. I think in a way to kind of like get me to stop doing it so many times, because I would do it and then like maybe I wouldn't be doing it 100% correctly and I'd be like, "Is this normal?" And he was like, "Okay, we're only doing it if I'm going to be home and I can tell you that, I hear the heartbeat and, I'm a doctor. I can, figure those things out." And he had to like really put me on like a schedule because my anxiety took over. I mean, it's the same thing after loss when you're like taking multiple pregnancy tests to like see if the line is getting darker. Um, I do that. Like with it, I did that all the time. And then I'd be like, "Oh my God, the line is like a tiny bit fainter. I'm probably losing the pregnancy." And you're measuring them and you're taking the pictures and seeing. I mean, it's really this it's this terrible place to be in, and it's heartbreaking, and I miss that, like, young, naive girl who was pregnant at the first time, who didn't do all these things, um,
No, this is
but
like yeah, this is I mean, just thinking about the, um, when what you said about the Doppler, I'm just remembering, like, my my husband the Dopplers were they were just starting like, my twins are 12 years old. For those of you in the audience who don't know this yet, I had 4 second trimester losses before having those twins. So we're talking about, like, between, let's say, 13 and 16 years ago. So it was a long time ago, but they were just starting like, you could, with some connections, get, like, a home Doppler, and my husband and my doctor both said to me, "You're not allowed to have it. We do not want you to have it." I'm like, "Why? I know what I'm doing. I could find the heart." I'm a doctor.
yeah,
I could figure it out. And they're like, "Absolutely not. Because for you, your anxiety is so high already that all we need is for you to have a Doppler at home, and then, like, it's just you're not gonna be a functional human being in whatever way, tiny way, you're still functional." And, like, they would not allow me to have it at home. Yeah.
yeah, that was the situation that was happening. It's very sad that it gets to that point. And then it would like I'd do the Doppler and I'd hear the heartbeat and it would make me like have a sigh of relief for I don't know what, a couple hours. And I'd be like, "Oh, well, what if in like the 2 hours since I did the Doppler, I didn't feel anything. So I need to check again." I mean, you really become this like obsessive, compulsive, these behaviors, and you're just constantly, "Am I as nauseous today as I was yesterday?" And this, and I go down these like Reddit threads and these, all these forums of like, "Is this normal? Is that normal? What does this mean?" And that, and it's just, it's this new world, and it's what it is, because of the history of what has happened. But I'm aware of it, and there is a community that is so supportive, and like you said, like, you understood exactly what I'm talking about. When you've gone through it, I mean, these are n you could go on Instagram of all these people who post their and Reddit and everything, who post all their pregnancy tests. Are the lines getting darker? Are they not? Do you see
Oh
a
my
faint
god.
line? Is
Yes.
it there? Is it not?
Yeah.
And, yeah. So
It
but
it
yeah, but back to that thought about, Darren remembers all these things really, really well. Um, and and then I look at my kids and I'm like, but it ends up with one of these at the end. And and do I want another? And do I, and it's hard. And about a year ago, yeah, like last Thanksgiving, we were like, oh, we're gonna maybe have another, and I got pregnant, and that was another loss. And now we're in this place of like, we don't know. We don't know. Um, you go through that. Like, we have three healthy children, and they're amazing. And I want to soak up every second with every single one of them. And but also maybe I want one more. I don't know. And then you think about these experiences, and could I do it again? I Yes. Would it be really a lot of anxiety? And each one, you have, for the first, you have one child. Now I have three that I have to deal with on top of like all the anxiety that comes with being pregnant. Um, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I do know that surrounding yourself with people who have gone through it and who understand in a different way, being on these forums with, I'm not the type. I've like posted on my own Instagram, but I've never like posted on a forum before. But even reading them, I don't know, it gives me some sort of comfort being just like an observer. And really, taking advantage of things like support groups and therapy. I mean, I can't recommend therapy enough. It's so important. And really like getting to the root of like the feelings. Um yeah, I mean, it's a club I never wanted to be a part of, but now that I'm here, I take advantage of all the things that are offered and that I can offer. And if I could be that sort of support for someone, I mean, that's the least I could do. It's all I wanted in those moments.
I think that I there is there are these moments where you like God, I believe, like, God created, pregnancy in this way where we forget, right? Like, we forget all of the terrible pain, like, because if anybody actually remembered, right, as you were saying, like, if you actually remembered, like, you would never voluntarily, like, go through any of that again.
Right.
But, like, you're sitting and you have that positive reinforcement of, like, the smiling face that's looking back at you, and as they grow, and, like, it's so positively reinforcing and reinforcing, and that, like, you wanna have more. And they here I am with the "and" again, right? Like, it is so debilitating for people who don't understand it. It is so debilitating, um, the anxiety. I mean, I guess my question to you as we kind of, like, are coming to this close to a little bit of a close here is, you know, y you speak about it matter-of-factly, and, like, I'm sitting here and you're speaking about it matter-of-factly, and I also hear so much of the emotion behind it, right? Like, we're not having this conversation immediately after a loss where you're in your bed and you're a mess. Like, we're having this conversation where there's, the gift of time, and time does help. So I guess from your vantage point right now, in a place of where you don't know if you're going to want to try again, if both of you are in that place, we'll get to that place. Like, but for people who are, you know, dealing with secondary infertility and people who are dealing with recurrent loss, like, what is your advice to them on how to get through whatever they're going through?
I think to just really, I mean, I think everyone is different. And like, there are people who, like you said, retreat and want to be alone, and knowing that that's totally acceptable, and really maybe looking inward and seeing, what is it that you need? Is it that you want to be alone? And if you are, realizing that it's okay to say to people that you want to be alone. Because I think a lot of times people are like trying to help by being around, and maybe sometimes that's not what you want. And being vocal enough, or having your partner or whoever is going through it with you, to be the one to say, like, you know what, that's not what this person needs right now. They actually need some time alone. It's nothing against you. Please understand. Um, if it is support, like being vocal about what that support is that you need. Because I do think, like I said, everyone is different. Some people enjoy distraction. Some people want to just like continue with life and not have anyone be like, woe is me. They don't want to be, woe is me. I need to take this time. So if it is that you want to just continue with life, like saying, I just want to move on with life as is. Please don't treat me any differently. Please don't mention it. And then if you're the opposite and you actually do want support, you want someone to listen, or even just like be there but not say anything, that's okay too. I think that people who are trying to support people who are going through any sort of fertility journey, y- you don't know what to say. There's nothing to say that is going to make the situation better. Um, so I think that realizing that and being okay, and kind of telling people like, I want you to just listen, or I want you to just sit here, and maybe you could help me with my other two kids so I could go and take a long shower. Or you know what would be really helpful? Bringing dinner for the week, so like we don't have to think about it. Um, so just that. And then I think personally, if the person is up to it, starting to like find that support, like find the support groups, even if it's something, or therapy is not something that like you've done before, trying it. Just going to one, I was supposed to have a baby, like support group. And I mean, you guys have them for everything. Just joining, and even you could just sit there and listen and not participate. And you might see that, like for me, when I posted it, I did not think that that was the response. And then you're like, oh, wow, this was exactly what I needed in this moment. So, and you will get through it. You will get through it somehow, even though it seems impossible in this exact instant. And I completely understand. Um, Yeah, and if I could be of assistance to anyone, if I could be a listening ear, I am more than happy to. I if my story could help one person, I would tell it over and over again.
Look, I know already that I don't have to ask. I know already that it will be helping so many people because people, the power of community, right? The power of just even one person,
Great.
like knowing that they're not alone, and that like in every story, like no story is exactly the same, but there are glimmers of you're like, oh yeah, I went through that. It wasn't
Mhm.
exactly the same, but the emotions were the same. Like the core of what is in so many of people's fertility stories, mine included, the core is always, it always comes down to pain and anxiety. Like that's what I hear a lot. Like I hear the pain of it didn't happen in the way I wanted it to. I don't have my family. Like and I don't know if it's ever going to happen. And then the anxiety of like especially when there's loss, but how much more so like that idea of I don't know if it's ever going to happen. Like there's so much pain and there's so much anxiety. Um Amanda, I can't thank you enough. I can't thank you enough. I I just like to end sometimes with a little bit of like some fun stuff. Like just
Really.
can you like for you just like the silly things like what were some things for you that helped you in those very deep dark times, like shows that you watched, books,
Yeah.
food, like activities, like what were
Yeah.
what were your things?
So, number 1 for me is exercise. that was how I started exercising and moving my body. There is nothing I think that feels better than knowing you moved your body. So that was for sure. A lot of Love Island UK. Because there's like infinite episodes. So that was really like I could just have it on. And a lot of like anything that has peanut butter, like Reese's and all of those things. That was and still is what gets me through anything hard. That is the way to my heart is to do, some sort of exercise while watching Love Island and eating a Reese's.
Okay, well, you have the combination down pat. You can just like send it off to everyone. Like,
Exactly.
okay, like anyone who
Exactly.
knows you now you know the secret.
Exactly.
I love it. I love it. And I also so much appreciate the exercise because it gives like for all of us, like it's a practical way that like you're moving your body in a way that like your body's been like all of our bodies have been through so much, but also the endorphins afterwards are like
Mhm.
such a gift.
Definitely. Yeah.
Such a
Exactly.
gift. Oh, Amanda, thank you so much for everything. This has been really powerful, and as I said, I know that it's going to help a lot of people.
No, thank you so, so much for having me on. And like I said, I'm an open book and there's an open door. However, you want to contact me, you're welcome to. So thank you, Aimee. And I was supposed to have a baby for everything you do and for giving all these stories a platform because it needs it.
We need to do it. We need to help people feel less alone. Um,
Exactly.
Okay, for all of you out there, Amanda's information, we will put that in the show notes so you can reach out to her by email. And thank you for listening. And if this episode has been meaningful or you think there's someone in your life that might find it meaningful, please like, follow, share, do all the things. Anyway, thank you so much again.